Transportation Planning. Today is Thursday, December 14th. We do this for the record. This meeting is being recorded. It's a public meeting being recorded. It will be available for everybody to listen to again or to see for the first time later. We are expecting at least one or two more legislators to join us, but we think they are en route from another meeting. They should be here shortly, but I didn't want to leave everybody waiting. Let's start with introductions of who's present. We have both committee members present and members of the legislature who live in or represent these areas. So if you could please introduce yourself with just your name and your district and whether you're a member of the committee. Let's start with Senator Meek.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Mark Meek, State Senator from Senate District 20, representing Oregon City, Glasgow, and Happy Valley, and I'm here as a member of this community and the Clackamas Caucus.
Just make sure to press your button.
Oh, thanks. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Courtney Neron, State Representative for this district, House District 26, and honored to be here not as a member of the committee, but as a legislator representing and listening to all of your voices and elevating those within the legislature, the legislative process, and just really an honor to have this committee in our district tonight to hear everything that you'll be sharing, and also here as a member of the Clackamas Caucus of Legislators. Thank you so much.
Senator Gorsuch, welcome. We're just saying our name and what district we represent.
Excellent. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm from that other part of Portland Metropolitan, Gresham, Troutdale, Wood Village, and Fairview, Senate District 25. I serve on the Joint Transportation Committee and on this committee, among others.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm pleased to be with you. I am David Gomberg from House District 10 on the Central Oregon coast. I represent Lincoln County and the western portions of Benton and Lane County. So I'm not from the Portland area. I'm just from the area of the state that you all come to vacation and spend money, and I hope you do that on a regular basis. I am a member of the special subcommittee. I also am the co-chair of the Budget Subcommittee on Transportation and Economic Development.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Nathanson. I'm a member of the legislature representing House District 13, that's North Eugene. I'm co-chair of this subcommittee. My co-chair is Senator Lou Frederick. Lou was scheduled to be at the meeting, was on his way to the meeting, and he has rerouted for medical care. Otherwise, he would be here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Lewis. I'm state representative for House District 18. And that district is eastern Marion County and portions of southern Clackamas County up to Malino, including Molalla. I also have the honor and the pleasure of serving on this subcommittee. And welcome.
Thank you. So again, welcome to this public hearing. It's a fancy name for a subcommittee, transportation planning. We're here to talk about tolling on the I-5 and I-205 corridors. Just to get to brass tacks, I would like to start our meeting with a few brief comments. Senator Frederick and I developed these notes, and I'm going to read them to make sure that I get our words, say everything that we intended to say, as Senator Frederick and I had agreed on. First of all, to begin with, there is Spanish and American Sign Language translation available for this meeting, so please let staff know at the sign-in table out there if you would like to utilize the services. In 2017, the Oregon legislature mandated that the Oregon Transportation Commission establish a traffic congestion relief program, which includes a variable time-of-day tolling program. The commission was directed to implement the tolling program on the Interstate 5 and Interstate 205 corridors from the Washington border to where they meet south of the city of Tualatin. However, the commission can also implement a tolling program anywhere in the state. Over the last 6 years, the Oregon Transportation Commission, ODOT, local leaders and officials, the Joint Transportation Committee, and community members have studied and discussed a tolling program in Oregon. This includes the creation of several citizen-based advisory boards and committees at ODOT. Some of these you may know about already, some of them you may not. Those committees include the Regional Toll Advisory Committee, a 27-member committee providing feedback to ODOT leadership in advance of any toll-related decisions. This committee has met 10 times to date, and their meetings are recorded and posted on the ODOT website and ODOT's YouTube channel. The Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee is a 13-member committee comprised of individuals with professional or lived experience in equity and mobility, and they advise the Oregon Transportation Commission and ODOT on how tolls on the I-205 and I-5 freeways can include benefits for populations that have been historically and are currently underrepresented or underserved by transportation projects. This committee has met 25 times, and recordings of their meetings and meeting materials are also available online. The Statewide Toll Rulemaking Advisory Committee is a 20-member committee ensuring that the voice of the customer will be heard in the rulemaking process. The committee has met 9 times, and recordings of their meetings and meeting materials are also available online. To date, the locations of tolling gantries, tolling fees, and how the tolling program will work has not yet been decided. Senator Frederick and I occasionally hear, either in a public meeting or in a private meeting, or just someone randomly connecting with us, sometimes hear that the toll will be such and such, and it's an amount of money, or it will be in a specific location. None of the locations, none of the amounts of tolls or any other sorts of programs, for example, discounts or forgiveness, none of that has been decided. Those are all still under discussion. So I'll repeat, to date, the locations of tolling gantries, tolling fees, and how the tolling program will work has not yet been decided. In May 2023, Governor Kotek directed ODOT to delay all toll collection until January 1st, 2026, to allow for more time to understand the impacts and trade-offs of tolling before these tolls take effect. The Special Subcommittee on Transportation was established under the Joint Committee on Transportation to provide a critical review and oversight of the planning work done to date and to listen to local leaders, stakeholders, and Oregonians on how tolling could impact and improve their communities. The comments you make today to our committee will be entered into the public record and will help inform the process. So thank you again for being here. We acknowledge that tolling in Oregon is a controversial topic. We ask that your comments critique ideas rather than individuals. We also ask that you refrain from demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior and speech directed towards others, and refrain from disruptive or disrespectful conduct during others' presentations. It's a shame that we have to say that in a meeting like this, but we need to say it. We are trying to hear from as many members of the public as possible today, so we ask that speakers limit their comments to 4 minutes each for the invited speakers and 2 minutes each for the public comments. You can email or mail in additional comments to this committee if you need more time. The email and physical mailing address for the committee is listed on the agenda for the meeting online, and staff can help you outside to find that address. We have set aside this first hour to hear presentations from local officials and community members, and then the hour after that is reserved for public comment. If we conclude the planned presentations early, we'll go directly into the public comments, and that leaves more time for public comment. So we will now begin our invited testimony. I would like to see, we have 3 seats at the front. Mayor Bubenik, Mayor Buck, and Mayor Fitzgerald. Could you please come up now? And after that, we will hear from Councilor Rosenthal, Ann Shevlin, and Kevin O'Malley. Since I haven't seen it, I'm going to ask staff to describe the timer and how it works.
And so the timer for you folks is up here, and it might sound off when the time's up.
Thank you. Mayor Bubenik, are you ready?
Sure. Good evening. I am Frank Bubenik, the Mayor of Tualatin. I want to thank you for inviting me today to speak. I understand that ODOT faces a budget issue with declining gas tax revenues and the increasing costs of road maintenance and enhancements. What I do not understand is how poorly ODOT has developed and communicated its proposed tolling program and how it has alienated itself and created the distrust of the agency. As a member of the Regional Tolling Advisory Committee, I am very frustrated, along with many others, with the lack of two-way communication and ODOT not truly seeking advice and wanting to make changes based on community feedback. Especially irritating are the net versus gross tolling revenue projections and the possibility of a 30 to 40% overhead collection cost of tolls. I support developing funding sources that allow ODOT to accomplish its mission, but not by using tolling as this mechanism. I do not support the current tolling plan for several reasons. First, our diversion and its related safety issues. Tualatin will experience its highest diversion on 65th Avenue and Stafford Road, along with Borland Road with I-205 tolling, and Boone's Ferry Road in 99W will be impacted by I-5 tolling. Studies have found that there are 1.6 motor vehicle crash deaths per 100 million vehicle miles traveled in Oregon. The fatality rate is over 6 times higher on rural routes such as Stafford Road and Borland Road. Diversion will also impact the ability of emergency vehicles trying to get to Legacy Meridian Park Hospital as it sits on the corner of 2 diversion routes. ODOT has stated diversion issues will be resolved by day 1 of tolling, but I see no signs of that as there are no funds to make these changes needed to address it. Tualatin just spent $20 million over the last 5 years to better its transportation system just to see diversion reverse all our progress. My second reason is that tolling will disproportionately impact low-income drivers. The OTC this week approved only a 50% waiver on tolls for drivers at 200% of FPL. Drivers who earn between 200 to 400% of FPL may be eligible for a substantially lower discount, but this program will not be ready by day 1 of tolling. Nearly 28,000 drivers commute to Tualatin for work each day, and 11,500 live in the city and commute elsewhere. Many of these drivers will likely be impacted by the cost of tolling and divert to local streets. Thirdly, Tualatin does not have adequate public transit. Many of the key corridors impacted by tolling are Tier 3 priorities in the region. Per OTC Chair Baker's comment this week about good diversion, where folks ride public transit, bike, or walk, that is not possible in Tualatin when heading east-west. We will experience a bad diversion, Chair Baker referred to, unless public transit alternatives are a much higher priority. Lastly, businesses in Tualatin have expressed to me concerns about the impacts of tolling in terms of employee attraction, employee retention, and increased costs of doing business. Small business owners fear they may lose customers who do not want to pay tolls to visit their shops and restaurants. I ask you to consider other funding sources beyond tolls, like increasing the gas tax, increased registration fees, and a VMT for electric vehicles to meet ODOT's budget needs. If tolls are implemented, ODOT must revenue share to ensure that projects in local communities have adequate funding to mitigate diversion impacts. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. We'll go now to Mayor Buck. And I appreciate the enthusiasm, but it will speed things along if we refrain from applause after every speaker, because you might feel like applauding a lot of them. Next, Mayor Buck.
Okay. I'm Mayor Buck. Hi, good evening, Madam Co-Chair, members of the committee. As Mayor of Lake Oswego, I have been deeply engaged in the toll proposals for several years, including as Clackamas City's representative on JPAC and as representative on MPAC as leader of Clackamas County's largest city. Lake Oswego recognizes the need to raise revenue for transportation projects that improve safety, increase transportation options, and mitigate the system's climate impacts. We can also recognize that ODOT as an agency is facing extraordinary funding shortfalls that require current executive and legislative action. But we should also highlight that ODOT's murky funding woes are not derived exclusively from projects along I-5 and I-205, and that the need to raise revenue for large regional projects and ODOT's operations and maintenance should be shared equitably by all Oregonians. While we do not oppose tolls as a piece of the funding equation, we strenuously oppose in the strongest terms the current proposals because as designed, they divert trips and emissions from the interstate onto local roads, they decrease safety and increase climate impacts. Without revenue sharing or the funding of mitigation projects, residents of abutting jurisdictions not only shoulder the tolls, but bear the impact of financing the local safety improvements needed to address their impacts. The piecemeal approach of introducing tolls on existing travel corridors in only certain portions of the region places the funding burden of a state system on only certain residents and greatly exacerbates the negative impact to local communities compared with a more comprehensive and broader regional and statewide approach the funding dilemma demands. Impacted jurisdictions have provided troves of detailed transportation data to ODOT as part of the local process that highlight these points. This is data and feedback compiled by transportation engineers, experts on this subject with advanced knowledge of the local system. Nevertheless, ODOT has refused to partner with cities to share revenue or meaningfully fund mitigation projects needed to keep our residents and road users safe, even on roadways currently under ODOT jurisdiction with substandard infrastructure. They favored meeting the minimum requirements for federal approval over building trust with local communities, brushing aside innumerable comments under the cover of legislative mandate. This is why your action as our state leaders is so important. Alternative transportation modes, including transit and active transportation for communities abutting I-205 in Clackamas County, are nearly non-existent. Tolling as a congestion management strategy, as the RMPP is, only works if drivers have options, as Mayor Bubanek pointed out, either the option to travel outside of peak times or to use other modes outside of the car. The letter that we've submitted as a city that supplements this testimony here highlights the specific dearth of options in our area. Any variable toll program congestion management approach should include a roadmap to expand transit and other options for users that works to decrease emissions on local roadways and improve safety. The projects currently being proposed, from project-specific tolls to variable price congestion fees along I-5 and I-205, will invariably impact immense numbers of residents. Despite ODOT's years of work and tens of millions of dollars in consulting fees alone, the relevant and basic details, Madam Co-Chair, you pointed out, of these programs, such as the basic amount of the tolls and the projects that they'll fund, are all completely unknown. There's also no understanding of the cumulative impact of these connected but separate programs and how the cost of the infrastructure and ongoing administration of the various toll programs compares to alternative options with similar variable pricing features like the VMT. Again, ODOT hides behind the legislative mandate and not pursuing alternative options beyond the toll programs. The legislature has signaled the need to talk about comprehensive transportation funding in the next long session. This conversation is critical, and we ask you to please analyze how the current path forward may very well be foreclosing on alternative options that could better meet our shared goals more efficiently while not imposing disparate impacts on certain communities. If short-term funding solutions are needed, please ensure those options are ones that equitably spread the burden of funding our system on all roadway users, like the gas tax does. Lake Oswego asks this committee to please ensure the state does not continue to pursue what could be the most inexpensive, costly of all options. No matter what plan we pursue, it must ensure local communities have safe roadways and alternative options to reduce emissions, and the local residents do not bear the impossible burden of financing those projects. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Julie Fitzgerald, Mayor of Wilsonville, and I want to first thank the committee for choosing Wilsonville as a place to hold this hearing. We welcome you here. One thing you may not know about Wilsonville is that we were founded in 1968, and we now have 27,000 residents and 20,000 jobs, and that's important when you think about people going back and forth. And I also want to recognize that paying for building or replacing of bridges, such as the Boone Bridge, is a traditional reason to advance a user fee, one of which is tolls. And we know that replacing the I-5 Boone Bridge with a seismically resilient bridge and an auxiliary lane capacity to enable the traffic to keep moving in a different way than it does today, along with a viable bike ped facility, is a top city and regional transportation priority. I wanted to add a couple of other points that are very important to Wilsonville, and that is that impacts of increased highway diversion onto local arterials must be adequately mitigated with toll sharing revenue. The approaches to tolling should be system-wide, and multimodal transportation alternatives and public transit must be taken into account. Wilsonville has a unique way of being negatively affected by tolls, and that is because of policies that ODOT had in place in the 60s and 70s that either spoke to or did not basically allowed the fact that our Charbonneau neighborhood, which is across the river, depends on the interstate highway in order to interact with Wilsonville. And so since its inception in 1971, that neighborhood of Wilsonville has been continually dependent on the use of the I-5 Boone Bridge for local access. And we have addressed this with ODOT numerous times. We actually have submitted a proposed goal action, number 612E, which is that tolling should be waived for trips on the interstate by residents, workers, and businesses of a community historically dependent upon the use of the interstate for local access when there is no viable alternative access to the city. And that's exactly a description of the Charbonneau neighborhood. I have a question in addition to providing some information about how this tolling proposal would affect Wilsonville. And my question is, when the legislature considers all of the costs to design, build, and maintain such a complex tolling system as the one that is being proposed, including personnel expenses, administration of toll collection, and oversight of the many important exemptions that we've talked about that I think are very good to include, I just wonder, I hope the legislature will spend the time needed to consider alternatives, because we just, as a state, I know all want to make sure that before we go ahead with tolling, we know for sure that it is the most effective, equitable, and efficient solution to our transportation funding problems. And I know that that is what this committee is looking at today. A couple of things that Wilsonville also does to contribute to solutions is we have an excellent public transportation system. We want to see our system and connecting with our neighboring communities expanded so that we can help ameliorate some of, the public transit system needs to be expanded tremendously in the South Metro region if tolling is going to be implemented. So with that, I thank you for your time and let you know that I've provided detailed written testimony as well. Thank you.
Thank you to all three mayors. Thank you for your very thoughtful comments that you prepared for us today. I really appreciate it. And by the way, if you would like, you can still submit them in writing for the public record, and if you would like to do that as written comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Councilor Rosenthal and Ann and Kevin, and after that, we're going to hear from Senator Woods. Whoever's ready, you just go ahead and start.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Co-Chair Nathanson and Co-Chair Mannix and the rest of the committee. My name is Ann Shevlin, and I am the president of the board of directors of Charbonneau Country Club. I do invite you to all come and visit Charbonneau. Some of you have been there to visit. It's a lovely place to retire if you have not been there. We are not all retired, though. Many of our citizens are very, very active. We are a master homeowners association. We have 1,267 homes and approximately 3,000 residents. We were, as Mayor Fitzgerald pointed out, annexed into the city of Wilsonville in 1971. Many of our residents are very, very active. And again, as Mayor Fitzgerald pointed out, our only way to get over into our city is across the Boone Bridge. It is our lifeline. ODOT points out how important it is to have collateral roadways and collateral or alternate ways to get across or use other means of transportation. We don't have those. The bike ped bridge is a wonderful opportunity for us. So we hope as we move forward with ODOT for any plans for transportation that that bike ped bridge, possibly even room for golf carts, is something that we can work with ODOT on. But back to the ODOT plans for tolling. And it's good to hear from Co-Chair Nathanson that there are not set in stone plans for where the tolling gantries will go, because we have been concerned that if they go directly over the north and south entrances to the Boone Bridge, that would create a very difficult hardship for our citizens in Charbonneau to be able to get across the Boone Bridge to get into their city, to use their city services that we've already been taxed for through our property taxes, and then to have to pay yet again another tax in the way of a toll to use our city services. So we would really ask that you continue to look at the location of the gantries, whether they go south, around Ellen Road in Marion County, or somewhere north, if the gantry placement is still up for consideration. We really appreciate that. I am a very busy grandmother of 4. I have 2 grandchildren in West Lynn, 2 grandchildren in Wilsonville, and I'm over that bridge 4 to 6 times a day, many times, to take them to appointments, to take them to piano lessons and sports programs. So that would be quite a hardship. There are other residents that are here today that will speak to the business portion that will be impacted, so I won't go into that. Also, we have a on-site extended care facility on campus in Charbonneau, and the executive director will be here to speak about that, and that would be very negatively impacted in regards to tolling. So I'm going to defer the rest of my time to the other gentlemen that are here to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, co-chairs Senator Mannix and Representative Nathanson, and welcome to all the other representatives and senators that are here. We're very happy that you came here to Wilsonville. My name is Garrett Rosenthal, and I represent District 3 on Oregon Metro, and that includes Wilsonville and southern Washington County, so the area around here, including the Boone Bridge and parts of 205. So I want to thank you for coming and coming to our region to hear directly from our communities and their concerns, as well as the local mayors. I'm going to focus my comments primarily on the transit aspect, as you will be hearing from other Metro councilors about some of the other aspects, whether it's diversion and so forth. So I won't, you'll hear that from other people, so I won't get into that in great detail. They will be offering additional feedback on other important topics. So Metro supported House Bill 27 in part because of the tolling. We accepted this additional tax on the community members because we thought it would simultaneously manage congestion, provide a revenue resource for major projects, and address community needs such as diversion mitigation. It also will add to, potentially supplement the need for operation and maintenance due to a declining gas tax, as has been mentioned before. So critical to achieving these goals is a strong investment in transit and providing other options. And studies have shown that diversion tolling, or I should say congestion tolling, can reduce vehicle miles traveled, so that it can be an effective tool in that regard. And this is important for people both immediately along the tolling corridor and on those that depend on the tolling corridor. If we want to meet our greenhouse gas reduction goals to avoid shifting the congestion to the interstate system onto our streets, we need to provide robust transit service in and around the impacted communities. For many constituents, it's simply the interstate system, and I mean not just the interstates, but also the other throughway systems that people use, for example, Highway 26. It's simply the only efficient way that they can get back and forth to their jobs. So it's important that they have to get to their home. They go from their home to their jobs, they go to the grocery stores, they go to medical facilities, and reach, all sorts of other appointments, plus take their kids to soccer games, as you know. The current level of transit is just simply not adequate to address these needs. And this, it does not come often enough, it does not travel on the locations or needs, and it takes too long to get to places. The successful implementation of a tolling program must provide some meaningful options to people directly impacted by these. And they need to be in place from the beginning, or at least a hard commitment to have them in place as soon as possible, so that the needs of these people can be met. And this includes expanding or supplementing or supporting the transit system here in the Wilsonville area. We're hopeful that the governor's pause on tolling and the creation of this committee represents a reset. We need clear legislative direction to the agency to deliver on the promises of HB 2017 to develop a tolling program that helps reduce congestion by shifting trips and by investing in transit, helping us all to meet these particular needs. And I would remind you that a study done, and this has been mentioned before, a study done previously indicated that tolling in this region is sort of a regional issue. In order to preserve both equity as well as regional equity, piecemeal tolling can cause complications and difficulties in local areas that then become inequitous to the people in various regions. So we need to work on this, and we need to think about this in a larger context. So I appreciate the opportunity to contact, and you will be hearing from, you already hear more from the Metro staff and our Metro other counselors. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, co-chairs Nathanson, Vice Chair Mannix, members of the subcommittee. My name is Kevin Faraci O'Malley, and I'm proud to serve as the CEO of the Wilsonville Area Chamber of Commerce. The mission of the Wilsonville Area Chamber of Commerce is to create and promote economic prosperity for businesses and citizens of the South Metro area. The subject of transportation is probably one of the single most important factors that impacts economic prosperity for businesses and all the working people who have jobs in our region. Thank you for the subcommittee for inviting us to be here tonight and speak to this critical issue. I have submitted written testimony entitled Seeking a Balanced, Comprehensive Approach to Transportation Funding this evening. It outlines our three major areas of concerns. Since I believe you will hear these same concerns from other testimony tonight, and when you move on to meetings in West Linn and Oregon City, I'd like to offer a different perspective for you to consider. On May 4th, the Governor Kotek, sent a letter to Speaker Rayfield, President Wagner, co-chairs Frederick and McLean. I quote, "I see value in taking the time necessary to ensure we are doing it right." I'd like us to ask ourselves the question, are we doing it right with this pause? I do not question your service. I commend you and honor your service. Rather, I am responding to the many conversations I hear from electeds, government staff, and citizens. A common theme is they're not listening, they're not hearing me, it's controversial. When actually, I think that the friction and gap is that the current tolling strategy is never really going to be the right plan. Members of the subcommittee, what businesses and citizens heard when the governor put a pause in place is that we'd get it right. That means a step back, working on creating a comprehensive approach to transportation funding rather than tinkering with a flawed tolling strategy that will end up costing the government and ODOT precious public goodwill and, importantly, time. We call for a collective effort to develop a more equitable and comprehensive transportation plan that genuinely addresses congestion relief, ensures safety, and is financially transparent and efficient. We stand ready to engage in constructive dialogue with ODOT, local and state officials, and other stakeholders to find a balanced and effective solution for our transportation system's funding and management. We thank you for your time tonight. We thank you for coming to Wilsonville, and for the committee and those that are listening. If by chance you ever happen to get caught in some congestion that happens once in a while in our area, we have wonderful businesses that would welcome you in for a cup of coffee, an oil change, lots of things. So thank you for being in Wilsonville, and thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you, Kevin. What is it, Sir? After Senator Woods, we will be moving to public testimony.
Good evening, committee. I thank you, each and every one of you, for being here this evening. Co-Chair Mannix and Co-Chair Nathanson, and all of the members of this special subcommittee on transportation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Aaron Woods, and I'm the state senator that represents District 13, which is where you're sitting right now, one of the cities. That includes Wilsonville, Charbonneau, Sherwood, King City, Tigard, southeastern part of Beaverton, and also a portion of Yamhill County. I have the privilege, and I say the privilege, of serving this vibrant city of Wilsonville and all the other cities that I mentioned. And I want to really extend my sincere appreciation today, this evening, for your willingness to listen to the voices that you have. This is a very serious matter. As a matter of fact, one of the very first comments that I made as a member of the Transportation Committee was concerning ODOT, and it didn't seem like they were listening to our constituents. But I thank you for listening to the voices of my community here regarding tolling and its impact on our area. The I-5 Boone Bridge Replacement Project, I think we all know, is very critical to Wilsonville as well as Oregon. The project is essential to ensure the safe and efficient movement of vehicles, as well as, I'll say, bicycles and others. When you see a bicycle going across that bridge, if you've been across the bridge, there's really no space for them. So it's critical that we focus on constructing a seismically resilient bridge over the Willamette River. However, the potential, and this is what weighed in my mind from the very beginning, the placement of these gantries where this city, and when you look at this city, we're the only city that has one way to get into their city center and one way to get out, if you will, to come back to, when I say that, I'm speaking of Charbonneau. You've already heard testimony this evening from at least one, and it's important that because we're the only city divided by, or will be divided by, this tolling system, you know, to require a resident to be able to have to pay to get into their city for their city services. It's ludicrous. And I know that everyone listening to this would also agree. Why should we make a resident have to pay, and I should say additional financial burden? It really creates an economic barrier as well as other issues within the community. Moreover, there's a substantial concern regarding the traffic diversion because of the tolling. Residents and commuters will, of course, seek alternative routes, and particularly here in Wilsonville, that's a tough one, and I'll leave it at that. Which, of course, is going to lead to, you know, increased traffic on smaller and possibly less equipped roads. The diversion could result in heightened congestion in other parts of the city and potentially degrading road conditions and increasing the likelihood, of course, of traffic accidents. Given these considerations, it's crucial that any decision on tolling considers the full spectrum of the consequences, including the potential, as I said a minute ago, for traffic diversion and whatever those cascading effects may be. While infrastructure improvements are necessary, they should not come at the cost of dividing my community with a toll of the unintended negative impacts of traffic patterns and road safety. Thank you again for coming here today and listening to the residents of this city and others on this issue.
Thank you, Senator Woods, our colleague. Now we're going to begin the public testimony part of the meeting. I'm going to call 3 names. Please come directly to the front. The next 3 names are in what we call the on-deck chairs. There are 3 seats with some yellow signs in the front that say reserved for on deck. I think that's what they say. So the next 3 come forward so that you're getting ready. First, we'll hear from Dr. Lee Harker, Gary Newbor, and Daniel Lacey. After that, Terry Klingerman, Joanne Linville, and Carol Goodwin. So the next 3, start making your way up to the front. Go ahead, whoever would like to start.
Thank you very much for having us here this evening. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to give feedback directly. I'm Dr. Lee Harker. I am a retired physician. I'm also on the board for the Charbonneau Country Club. Charbonneau is a very vibrant, not tottering, falling down community of 3,000 some people with a voting participation of 90% to 95% of all of the registered voters in the community. We care deeply. And I'm a recent widow. I am now making at least 8 round trips every week over that bridge and into Wilsonville. I realize that maybe people think that it doesn't matter that much or that you can change your times. Try telling that to my dog who goes to doggy daycare at 7 in the morning and is at the door waiting for me to take her. And I have to do that. I don't have anybody else to help me with her now. There's a lot of ways in which the costs of tolling will get passed on to the residents of Charbonneau if Wilsonville is split into 2 pieces. We are Wilsonville as well. We're all part of it. We're not 2 separate communities. We have no grocery store. We have none of the resources that the city does. The tolling issue has destabilized our retirement security and raised questions about the future affordability of just getting across the bridge to get in and get necessities. Please hear us tonight. The residents in the community part of Wilsonville that I live in, we do not support the current tolling plan, and we really want to see other alternatives included. There are alternative forms of revenue generation, increasing vehicle registration forms, equitably taxing electric vehicles, and considering a once-a-day cordon toll on all the roads that go into Portland to encompass the people that travel into the city, something that makes it okay. I have submitted what I was planning to say in written format, and you can read that. One last comment. We have so many people that come to Charbonneau to provide services, and those include handymen, housekeeping, gardening, landscape, and all the other services. They will cost us more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good evening, members of the legislative panel, and particularly Representative Neron and Senator Woods for your excellent leadership. Probably 95% of the people in this room, we appreciate it. And to Senator Meeks for your bill, we appreciated that too. My name is Gary Newbor, and I'm the past president of the Charbonneau Board of Directors. I'm also a resident of Charbonneau, passed just before Ann. I'm sure you've heard plenty of negative comments about tolling by now. It looks like some of you are running out of gas, sorry. But spending 40% of tax revenue on administration for a bill for tax revenue makes no sense at all, and that's what my understanding the cost of administering it is. And so I really ask you to look at some other kinds of taxes, such as VMT, weight mile, something else. Just look at the broad spectrum, not just one tax, just based on efficiency alone. My intention is not to add more logs to the fire here, but rather repeat a request I have made to the Oregon Transportation Commission, our legislatures, and ODOT in previous oral and written testimony. To date, I've received no feedback or assurances of any kind on any of my testimonies, which I find sort of a sad statement of affairs regarding public input. As you've heard before, and I hate to be repetitive, but Charbonneau is a mostly retired HOA community of about 3,000 people, and we only have one way to get into our city of Wilsonville. That's across the Boone Bridge. Most of our residents need to go into the city on a daily or weekly basis for groceries, gas, medical, visit the post office, visit the library, all those services you'd expect of a city. To place a tolling gantry on the Boone Bridge unfairly splits our city and penalizes the residents of Charbonneau by making us pay far more than our fair share for what should be a statewide tax system. Home values will plummet, according to local realtors. I mean, who would buy a home in an area where we had to pay a toll every time you walked out the front door? That's what you're asking us to do. We walk out the front door, where's your money? Charbonneau businesses, as you've heard also, would also suffer because of the increased problem of getting employees. Almost done. My request that if tolling proceeds, that the tolling gantry in this area either be moved south of Charbonneau I-5 exit 282 or north of Wilsonville I-5 exit 286. If that is not possible for some unfathomable reason, then please grant a toll waiver to Charbonneau residents and employees of our businesses. It's simply not fair to unduly burden the people of Charbonneau in particular to pay for this region-wide system. Again, thank you very much for coming tonight to our city of Wilsonville.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good evening, Co-Chair Nathanson, Vice Chair Mannix, and the rest of you on a committee with a seriously long name. I'm Daniel Lacey with the Tualatin Chamber of Commerce, and I'm testifying today on behalf of our CEO, Analea Jackson, who could not be here today. The Tualatin Chamber of Commerce and its Business Advocacy Council got involved with tolling in 2022 when we realized that our businesses would be heavily burdened if we did not advocate for them. Tualatin has 27,000 residents, of which 26,000 employees drive into Tualatin for work each day, and 11,000 drive out of our city to other work locations. As our businesses struggled to recover from COVID, we heard that employees were difficult to bring back. When our businesses heard tolling would inundate our area, our businesses voiced their concern for employee retention. Thus, in October of 2022, we launched an educational website, OregonTollingUpdates.com. I, Daniel, am the chief editor and podcast voice of that site. Through our combined efforts, we have seen, heard, and witnessed a lack of transparency from the powers that have our highways, roads, bridges, and quite frankly, our businesses and communities hostage. We are respectfully in a battle to save our very infrastructure. They hold that which is vital to our infrastructure and have proven that you, our legislators, have no control to this point. They ask for funding, yet continue to spend and forecast spending on projects for which they have no money. They have threatened operations and maintenance reduction, twisting the arm of our elected officials for more money. They claim they are working on alternatives to tolling, yet say those are 6 months to a year off. I say again, we have seen, heard, and witnessed these issues, which would have gotten anyone fired from a job, yet they continue to be allowed to operate. So respectfully, as our legislators, those whom the people, we the people, have voted in, keep ODOT in check. Make them come to the table, not with an agenda, but with eyes and ears open, that they would consider all ideas and solutions so that we can work together to solve our transportation issues. Divided, we fail, but together, we can prevail. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will hear. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will hear from Terry Klingerman, Joanne Linville, Carol Goodwin. After that, please come forward to the on-deck chairs. Kristen Sacco, Edward Lacey, and Bob Bauer. Go ahead.
We're not going in that exact order, Co-Chair Nathanson.
Just state your name first, and
Yes.
we'll get it straightened out here.
Senators, representatives, council members, my name is Carol Goodwin. I'm a resident of the Charbonneau community. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback regarding the proposed tolling on I-5 Boone Bridge. I surely hope that the feedback you received today makes a difference and provides clarity to inform your decision-making. As a Charbonneau community resident, I am part of a voting block of approximately 3,200 people. Because of our community's geographical location, just under the Willamette Bridge, we're essentially landlocked in terms of our ability to get food and essential services. Charbonneau is primarily a retired population. This means, though not necessarily low income, most of us are on a fixed income. Our community's best option for obtaining food and medical care is to use the bridge that crosses the Willamette to the first Wilsonville exit to get these services. There is no regular city transit from this community, and because we are landlocked, there's no other option for us to access the greater Wilsonville area without going over the bridge. Many of us travel to Wilsonville at least 3 to 4 times a week for medical, dental, postal, and food essentials. Most of us take the first exit to Wilsonville, which means there's rarely a need to merge onto I-5. In my correspondence with the ODOT Rules Committee about current tolling options, I discovered that there's a plan called B2. Plan B2 would allow Charbonneau residents the ability to get into Wilsonville proper for medical and food essentials without being tolled, which would be a great benefit to our community. After all, we don't want to be penalized because of where our community is located at the bridge. My question to you is, what actions do we need to take to further actions to make further progress towards the Plan B2 option? And I thank you for listening and for your careful consideration.
Thank you. Next.
Co-Chair Nathanson, Vice Chairs Boquist and Mannix, and members of the subcommittee, and particularly my greetings to Senator Woods and Representative Neron. Thank you for being here and holding this hearing in our community. I am Dr. Joanne Linville, and I serve as a city councilor for the city of Wilsonville. I also have the pleasure of serving on the Governor's Opioid Settlement, Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery Board. I am an elected official in the city of Wilsonville, and although I live in Charbonneau, we do not have districts or wards, so I serve all of the residents of the city of Wilsonville. In order for me to act on my requirements as an elected official, I need to travel frequently from my home in Charbonneau to the city of Wilsonville. And I do that quite frequently. And I care about the citizens on both sides of the river. I would like to emphasize some of the points that Mayor Fitzgerald testified to earlier. In particular, the residents, and many of them as seniors of the Charbonneau district, live in a residential community with no other route to access the remainder of Wilsonville other than over the I-5 Boone Bridge. And Charbonneau, although it is spoken about as if it's a separate community, it is within the city of Wilsonville. In a similar manner, Wilsonville residents, workers, and businesses north of the I-5 Boone Bridge often do their business and serve and visit Charbonneau, particularly, as you heard earlier, that we have people whose family live on both sides of the river. An exemption from tolling when crossing the I-5 Boone Bridge for Wilsonville residents and businesses would allow ODOT to deal equitably with the residential population dependent historically upon the interstate for local access and essential goods and services, including medical appointments, shopping, and amenities. Thank you for your time and consideration of my testimony.
Thank you.
My name is Terry Clearman, and obviously, I did not plan anything. I must have signed in at the wrong place because I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I am a resident of Charbonneau, and I think most of my concerns, in fact, almost every one of them, has already been mentioned and talked about with previous speakers. So I just consider everything and just be fair with your outcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the shortest one.
Brief testimony is fine, too. We're glad you're here. Kristen, Edward, and Bob, and after that, we're going to hear from James Farley, Carlin Lynch, Jason Fields.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening to listen to our testimony. My name is Kristen Sacco, and I am a resident of Tualatin. Tualatin lies directly within the corridor under consideration for congestion pricing. I have many serious concerns regarding the impact tolling will have on my community, including congestion on our side streets, environmental concerns, the ongoing cost of the program, and the impact to our business community. However, due to the time limitations, I will focus on equity and access. Many Tualatin residents are part of lower income and historically underserved populations. These populations will be disproportionately impacted by tolls. Many lower income families rely on hourly jobs and do not have the ability to choose when they need to use the freeway system. They cannot choose to go to work when fares are lower. Many of those families also share vehicles and work multiple jobs. Their schedules are tight. Therefore, it is not always possible for these folks to use slower alternative routes off freeway systems. I understand there is consideration to explore exemptions and discounts. However, I have been part of many tolling discussions, and it has been stated these types of programs at best are only accessed by about 5% of the community members who qualify. That means 95% of the community members who need assistance will not receive it. And this inequity in access reaches far beyond these types of services into many of our other services. In part, tolling is trying to get people off of our congested freeways and utilize alternative means of transportation. However, Tualatin lacks access to reliable and efficient public transit. For Tualatin residents and businesses, transit is not a viable option due to the time it takes to get from one point to another, multiple stop requirements, family situations, and transit is not going to where they need to go. I understand the need for an additional revenue stream. My ask is that you please ensure the plan is equitable and reliable means of alternative transportation is accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having this meeting tonight, but I kind of like Terry. I'm Ed Lacey. I live in Charbonneau, and we've listened tonight with your introductory remarks about 27 meetings here, 28 meetings there. We're unsure of the plan. I think you need to have a definite plan of action. This tolling system is really penal for the Charbonneau people in particular. Their services are all in other locations. So when you look at these tolling projects nationwide, well, for instance, we have 38 cents a gallon coming out of fuel costs, and it's already been mentioned, all the different revenue sources that you could approach. And they're much more efficient, less costly, easier to administrate, and they're already in place. So I have you really prayerfully consider any action that you take apart from a constitutional vote by the citizens of Oregon. I just think there should be some way that we can have an amendment on the ballot in November, and then you can hear the voice of your representatives. You know, we elected you. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
I'm Bob Bauer, and it seems like I'm the last, and all my thunder's been stolen here. I did sign up to make a comment, but frankly, you guys have to be perceiving there's a violent agreement around a lot of these issues here. I own a business in Wilsonville, and am a resident of Charbonneau, and I can tell you without reservation, the tolling program will affect both my businesses, and my business and my problem of having to go, 2 and 3 times a day, along with my wife having to travel that, it is a penalty. And so I'm with Ed, and I don't understand the process very well, but putting it to the people, creating a bill where there's clear transparency and a plan that's really thought out, and say, okay, how do you guys feel about that, so that you really can get us involved and we can make a decision, to me is crucial.
Thank you all three for being here. James, Carlin, and Jason. And after that, we will hear from Valerie Pratt, Larry Walker, Dorothy Von Eggers. Go ahead. Whoever wants to go first.
Well, I'll start. My name's Carlene Lynch. I live in Wilsonville, and I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to give community input. I believe, after living and working and commuting around the city for over 40 years, that Clackamas County, I want to speak for Clackamas County, we've been subsidizing Multnomah County for years. We're poorly represented, and it's easy to put the tolling in Clackamas County. Put it on 205 and put it on I-5. And I've been watching this, and transportation money spent on Highway 26, billions of dollars in the last 20 years. Now I'm watching 217 get multi-million dollars worth of work. And why is our community, why is Clackamas subsidizing these for years? We've been paying and subsidizing, and so I really think that Multnomah County needs to start paying their full share. It's where so much of the traffic is going. Why don't we have the cutoff road that are heading to the coast that's up by Days Prison? Where did that project go? And so I really want to speak for Clackamas County to say, we're tired of subsidizing the rest of the state.
My name is Jason Fields. I'm a lifelong Oregonian, born and raised in Portland. Living in Oregon is incredibly expensive. We have one of the highest income tax rates in the country, only second to New York. Oregons pay some of the highest fuel taxes in the country as well. We cannot afford tolls. They will hurt small businesses, young families, students, our elderly, our migrant workers, simply everybody. ODOT has stated that one of the reasons we need tolls is because they are not collecting as much fuel tax revenue as we have in previous years. That is completely false. This year, Oregon is set to collect a record amount of fuel tax. If we need more revenue for projects, we need to consider charging electric and hybrid vehicles a per mileage tax so they can pay their fair share. In addition, I would consider raising the fuel tax on gasoline vehicles. The next slap in the face is that ODOT has said between 45 and 65% or greater of the tax revenue collected from tolls will go towards administrative costs. How does this make sense to anybody sitting in this room, sitting anywhere in the world, okay? When a project, here's the deal, is when a project is put together and they decide to do a toll for it, when that project is completed, the tolls end. None of the tolls will ever end. None of them. There is no end date, period. I'm running for state representative. I intend to do whatever I can to stop these tolls. Thank you for listening to us.
Next comment. Thank you. Next comment.
committee members, legislators, senators, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. I think that this is a Portland metro area traffic problem. It's the metro's traffic congestion. I'm sorry, James Farley, I'm a resident of Oregon City. This isn't the problem with the rest of the state. This is our problem, and it's already been stated, we don't have a comprehensive plan for the metro area. A solution that is going to not unfairly burden those who don't live in this part of the state. The Department of Transportation has been looking and continues to look at each interstate project as a tollable event. We need to engage Metro and the rest of the area to develop a comprehensive plan to support the management of traffic through corridors, whether it's 205 from I-5 up to the Glenn Jackson Bridge, or what those other corridors are. And if we have tolls, toll the entire corridor, not each bridge or archway or entrance and egress. And we have to have a comprehensive plan, because if we say toll the I-5 bridge, but we don't toll the 205 bridge, well, everybody's just going to go over there, and we've just pushed the bubble from one side to another. Other communities have had this challenge. When they put in tolls, they put in a toll road down the middle of the highway. It is the only thing that's tolled. The lanes on the outside are not tolled. We wouldn't be having this discussion. ODOT's gotten this feedback. They're not responding to it. That's what Bellevue did. It's what they do in Chicago. It's what they do north of Baltimore. They have a tollable road, and that's the only thing that gets tolled. If you want to go fast, pay the toll, it's there. Otherwise, you don't. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comments. Valerie, Larry, and Dorothy. After that, we will hear from Greta Schneider, Garth Hallman, and Mike McCarthy.
Hi, I'm Valerie Pratt, and I'm a 27-year resident of Tualatin. We have a wonderful city with a lot of great attributes, but one of the problems we've always had is traffic. In addition to that, with the future densification, it's only going to get worse. Tolling is going to directly affect our community. And I have a multitude of concerns for the current plan, including economic inequities, administrative cost, environmental impacts, safety, and the impacts of diversion on our community. The purpose of tolling per HB 27 is to pay for specific high-cost infrastructure, achieve congestion reduction, or a combination of the two. The now scrapped plans to add a third lane on the 7 miles of I-205 was meant to meet these two purposes. ODOT's materials for the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee in November state that the single plan point option that is currently being put out there for the Abernathy Bridge would result in higher toll rates that are outlined in their financial scenarios and result in higher levels of diversion and greater impacts to customers. The expected additional diversion off I-205 from the current tolling plan will also have a dramatic effect on the safety and very lives of our community members. Meridian Park will be affected by this diversion of our hospital in Tualatin. I think we all know that a few extra moments getting to a hospital can make the critical difference between life and death. Those who support tolling as a way to find and incentivize the use of public transit are to be commended. Unfortunately, in our region, the whole region around I-205, there is no public transit from TriMet. There are a few north-south routes. The three I found in this area, the 96 bus, the I-154 bus, and the West bus are all scheduled by TriMet to have reduced service or be eliminated. So we have no way to do this. Anyway, thank you. I ask you as elected officials to please do what is right for all of the citizens of our state.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Larry Walker. I live in Charbonneau. One of the three foundations of ODOT's strategic action plan is equity. You've heard references to equity a few times this evening.
In its toll projects equity framework, ODOT defines equity as the effort to provide different levels of support based on an individual or group's needs in order to achieve fairness in outcomes. In addition, going further, the Oregon Toll Program describes outcome equity as striving to prevent historically excluded and underserved communities from bearing the burden of negative effects that directly or indirectly result from toll projects. Now, Charbonneau is certainly not excluded or presently underserved, but our community may well become less included, much less included, and much less served if ODOT implements tolling and decides to locate a tolling gantry at or near the Boone Bridge. I agree that equity and outcome equity are important factors in making decisions about gantry positioning, assuming that tolling at some point becomes a reality. So let's examine this issue purely from an equity perspective. Charbonneau residents and those who live in surrounding homes, as you've heard multiple times tonight already, have no alternative route to Wilsonville other than the Boone Bridge. For that simple reason alone, a toll, especially with a gantry, anywhere near the Boone Bridge is inequitable. Hundreds of personal care workers, housekeepers, maintenance workers, and other local businesses, again, as you've heard multiple times, serving the 3,000 residents of Charbonneau, would pay a substantial price to continue that service. That's inequitable. You'll hear later about the impact on Spring Ridge, our assisted living facility and memory care provider. Any kind of impact on their workers is inequitable. So I urge the subcommittee to avoid as much as you can these inequitable outcomes that you've heard about tonight. And if tolling does in fact, unfortunately become a reality, to do everything that you can to advocate to not locate a tolling gantry anywhere near the Boone Bridge. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dorothy Von Eggers, and I am a resident of Wilsonville. Tolling is a bad idea, and here's why. Number one, it will increase traffic on the side roads, bringing a higher risk of pedestrian, and bicycle, and vehicle accidents. Specifically, Wilsonville Road East will be used to move traffic through Wilsonville to other cities. This increase jeopardizes the safety of our students with schools along Wilsonville Road East at Beckman Creek Primary, Wilsonville High School, and Meridian Creek Middle School. I am sure a similar scene will play out in neighborhoods all throughout the area. Reason number two, it's a bad idea as it will not only cost drivers directly, but will cost us in the long run by higher consumer prices. These tolls will be passed on by trucking companies carrying food and goods, by delivery trucks such as FedEx, UPS, and Amazon. The United States Postal Service uses these roads, as well as trucks that carry fuel. These increased costs will all be borne by the end user and not the stockholders nor the owners of the company. I recommend you wisely and prudently use the gas tax and federal monies to take care of the existing freeways. We just can't be squeezed any further. Thank you for listening and hearing our voices.
Thank you. Thank you both. We have Greta, Garth, and Mike. After that, we will hear from Rich Peppers, Don Powers, and Brian Hudson.
Hi, good evening. My name is Garth Hallman, and I am the Executive Director at Spring Ridge at Charbonneau. Some of the residents here have done a fantastic job of articulating the importance of Charbonneau. Senator Woods, thank you for all of your efforts related to this talk. But before I get into specifically how I think tolls will impact my business, first of all, I'm a businessman, and I don't envy the challenges that you face. But I will tell you that today I took a look at the ODOT budget online, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of entries on that budget. And the first thing I would ask of you is to please be good stewards of those resources that you already have. It is critical that we use those funds in a proper manner. Back to Spring Ridge at Charbonneau. So I have had the pleasure of operating this community for 20 years in the Charbonneau district. I represent 250 residents and another 150 employees. Our number one concern is quality of life for our residents, having a community that is viable for employees. We have a number of employees who do commute from the northern part of the metro area into the Charbonneau district. We have families who travel to and from the community multiple times in the course of a week, which would greatly impact them. With every resident, there's approximately 5 individuals who are advocates for them, including parents, friends, et cetera, who constantly make visits to the community. We do have assisted living and memory care, but we also have 180 residents of highly active people who drive, who travel, who do all sorts of things. I met with them this morning. They are deeply concerned about how it will impact them to the pharmacy, to the grocery store, to entertainment, to the various good, services that they need outside of the Charbonneau district. But I will tell you that I really think this will, quite frankly, ruin our business over a period of time as a viable place to live and a viable place to work. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
I'm Greta Schneider, and I technically live in Aurora by address, but I'm actually over by the Butteville store, which is one of our oldest towns around here. So we're just a little bit west of Charbonneau. So I like the cohesive group they have here from Charbonneau, but I just like to say there's a lot of the rest of us living out around and about who also have to go over the Boone Bridge to get anywhere. I mean, you can go south a little bit, but still you go to Portland, you go to Tualatin, you go to Tigard for doctors, all kinds, medical stuff, most of your shopping. And if we stop going, and we try not to just drive for the heck of it, the stores are already hurting from going through COVID. So they don't need to have people stop shopping because it's going to cost $15 extra to go to Tualatin and back. So it's a consideration. And there's no way tolling is ever going to be equitable. As Carlene pointed out, I came with her, there's so much traffic up north, but why are we going to pay for it with our everyday living down here? There's no way that, taxes on gas, on electric cars, other sales tax that go across the whole state are much fairer. And something else I thought of just the other day, life has changed. Most of us in this room have gone through most of our working lives already. But there are a lot of young people out there are doing things like driving pizzas to people's homes and stuff. When they're out there running around picking up pizzas, they're going to have to pay tolls. How are they going to get paid back for that? Would you rather have that one car delivering everything or 8 families going to Papa Murphy's? That's not getting rid of traffic, that's increasing it. And a lot of these people are doing that to offset incomes because it's hard to make a living now for young people. So there's things we never did to make money that depend on being able to get around on the road affordably. So I hope you'll consider the broad picture too and make it equitable if possible, or no tolls if possible.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike McCarthy, Tigard resident. Thank you all for your service to our state, and thank you all for listening. If the gas tax had been indexed to inflation a couple decades ago, we wouldn't need to be here because ODOT would have enough money to fund the projects that they need to get done. And we wouldn't have to be talking about this tolling program that would have horrendous impacts on our communities. Because tolling would cause thousands and thousands of drivers to divert around the tolls onto local roads. When they divert off the freeway onto an urban arterial, they have 6 times the fatal and serious injury crash rate. Far higher on rural arterials, Stafford, Borland, 65th. This tolling program, as proposed, would result in dozens more fatal and serious injury crashes every single year. Do you want that blood on your hands? When drivers divert on local roads, they spew out far more pollutants and are cutting through our town centers, our neighborhoods, and our industrial areas where we're trying to make walkable. How can we make a community walkable when we have freeway traffic cutting through it? Tolls also disproportionately hit lower income workers, drive away employers, drive away businesses that bring money to our state. Looking at the cost of this program, millions and millions so far to discuss it and analyze it, hundreds of millions to build the infrastructure, and a very high percentage to administer the whole program, it would take almost $500 million just to repay the cost of starting the program. That's almost $500 million before ODOT gets a dime in revenue for projects. If you value safety, if you value climate, if you value community, if you value walkability, if you value equity, if you value our economy, if you value efficient use of taxpayer dollars, then stop this tolling fiasco in its tracks now.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we're hearing from Rich, Don, and Brian. After that, on deck, Carlos Montes and Kathy Lewis Doherty.
After me? Okay. Thank you for holding this here in Wilsonville. We do appreciate you being here. Mr. Mannix, good to see you again. My name is Don Powers. I live here, I live in Sherwood, actually, but I have property, a farm over here in Wilsonville. I can tell you the traffic through Stafford and 65th right now is horrendous. They put a new temporary light in there. There's a new school going in. There's all kinds of traffic already as it is. I can't imagine diverting traffic off the highway is going to be any good for this area. But I don't want to speak just from a selfish point of view. In other words, I mean, not to diminish everything that people from Charbonneau said, because I think it's a very valid point, but on a bigger scale, on a metro area scale, on a statewide scale, and we look at what's happening. What's happening here, let's just say for a minute that we take for granted this whole hoax of climate change, right, and say it's real, and that having people use public transportation, take bicycles and all this stuff, let's just say that that's all a really wonderful, great idea. I can tell you that the train that comes into Wilsonville here, I usually get stopped by it at least once a day, if not twice. There's nobody on it. Nobody. It'll go by, and sometimes I'll see one person on it. And I'm sitting there waiting. There's 15 cars emitting all these emissions, right? And the train goes by. There's one person on it. People don't want to take that transportation. They don't want it. What they want is to be able to get in their car and have the freedom to move about the country, as our Constitution allows us to do, to move about the country freely, about the state freely, right? Unlike what some people have said here, I'm not a proponent of any more taxes. We're taxed to death. The government needs to be more efficient. ODOT needs to be more efficient with the money it has, as somebody previously mentioned. No more taxes. Government is big enough as it is. I don't want to see anybody running on more taxes. I don't think the idea of putting in tolls is a good idea because it never stops. What you end up with is a monopoly. There's only one way around this area. Over the 205 bridge, there's no real option to get around it. There's none. So you have a monopoly. And what happens with a monopoly? Prices go up. They become tyrants. It's a terrible, terrible idea. Listen to your constituents. We don't want it. That's all you really need to know. You don't need to know all the details. We don't want it.
Thank you.
Next, thank you.
Thanks for my chance to comment. My name is Rich Peppers. I'm retired, live in Portland's Montevilla neighborhood, and I'm a volunteer with MCAT, which stands for Mobilizing Climate Action Together. And with all due respect, might have another voice here. Regarding highway tolling, we certainly would support the idea of doing a comprehensive solution, and 2025 sounds like when that's going to be happening. But regarding highway tolling specifically, MCAT has developed some general principles we recommend if tolling is going to be implemented. And other MCAT volunteers have presented those both verbally and in writing in previous hearings, so I won't give you the whole list again. Just a few key points. We encourage prioritizing tolling as a form of congestion pricing to incentivize reductions in vehicle miles traveled. We support using most tolling revenue to enhance travel by other modes and to alleviate the impact of diversion and on low-income populations, and tolling early enough that changes in traffic flow and volume can be factored into the design of highway expansion projects. Beyond the topic of tolling, however, I wanted to encourage the committee to request a prospective big-picture climate and equity analysis, not just a project-by-project analysis, for key project and policy decisions under consideration in the transportation sector each year. The goal would be to ensure our overall emissions and equity measures for the sector as a whole are heading sufficiently in the right direction. On that note, I'd like to recognize that ODOT's new website, OregonTransportationEmissions.com, is a welcome and good step forward, but it is designed to take into account policies that have already been decided upon, not new projects or policies under consideration. So to encourage that adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Next.
Good evening. Thank you for coming and listening to us this evening. My name is Brian Hodson. I am the mayor of the city of Canby. I have been the mayor for almost 12 years. In that time, I have served on the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee for all 12 of those years, with 6 of those as the co-chair, where we have focused on transportation issues and planning. I have also been on the Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation since its inception, and I've been involved in several other committees for Clackamas County around transportation, housing, and now tolling. For my time this evening, I'd like to paint the picture of what diversion looks like for the city of Canby. Canby is a growing community outside of the metro area and acts as a satellite community. We are still a very heavy agricultural community with which we take tremendous pride in. We are a community that focuses on the balance of livability and proper growth. Our city is divided by Highway 99E. This highway acts as the main thoroughfare through our city. It acts as a diversion route currently for those trying to get from I-205 to I-5 and vice versa. When there is an accident around the Boones Bridge, we see a tremendous increase in the amount of traffic that peels off to get around Boones Bridge through our city. When there is an accident on 205 that slows traffic to divert or to connect into I-5, we see a tremendous increase in traffic. That traffic from 205 to 99E comes from Oregon City, and not just from 205 using 99, it also comes over the hills of Oregon City as people route their way to an area with less traffic. Because 99E sees this tremendous influx of traffic, 2 of our arterials have become bypass routes around 99E. One bypass route takes drivers through the neighborhoods of homes, with more homes on the way, as well as by schools. Traffic finds the path of least resistance, and 99E is that path of least resistance. Thank you.
Mayor Hudson, if there was anything that you didn't get to say, please, and all of you, if there was anything you didn't get to say, please send comments in so that we can have the rest of it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're hearing from Carlos and Kathy and also Frank Coleman. And then that completes the list of testimony for tonight.
Hi, can you hear me? My name is Kathy Lewis Doherty. I'm a resident of Lake Oswego. I would certainly be affected by, but we're between the 5 and the 205, we'd be affected by traffic coming off of both of those, so I'm very concerned about traffic coming through our area. I'm also very concerned about that any plan that we come up with should reduce vehicle miles traveled and encourage public transit. In reducing congestion, I think that we need to make sure that we toll both freeways at once, that you can't do one or the other, otherwise it's going to push everything to one freeway. I'd like to encourage you to think about tolling the bridges, not the bridges on the way, the interstate bridges. Because if you toll the interstate bridges, people can't go around them
onto local traffic. So half of that argument is gone. And if we reduce the people crossing from Washington here that live there, work here, and vice versa, Portland is the only city I've ever found that seems to have a reverse traffic pattern, that if I try and go in the evening into the city, traffic is worse than when I try and come out of the city. So that's a lot of people who have decided to, you know, if they're trying to have a better lifestyle by living in one place and working in the other, then maybe they need to pay for that too. So, and that's an area where you could have public transportation as an alternative. If you're building the interstate bridge with public transportation on it, then they have a way to, you know, and you can pay for the bridge so it doesn't fall down before we get a chance, you know, from an earthquake, before we get a chance to replace it. So I would like to encourage tolling on the bridges. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Frank Comer. My wife and I are residents of Charbonneau, and there's many points are made tonight, but a couple I'd like to talk about that have not been talked about. Tolling, I believe, is not an appropriate or cost-effective approach, and many people talked about that aspect. But what I want to mention around tolling is tolling once if it becomes a vehicle, that's like a tolling camel entering the tent. And it will be easier for the state agencies to take that infrastructure that is going to gobble up most of the revenue from the few places that it's tolling. And my belief is within 10 years, we'll be tolling 26, we'll be tolling 84, we'll be tolling 405. It will just expand to help the revenue stream that's a new vehicle of creating money. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the tolling has been talked about, depending on the audience, as an objective to accommodate traffic and also revenue. My personal belief that the accommodating traffic is only about 20% of the objective. The biggest part is and other means of revenue. If you implement tolling, we're going to need to implement the infrastructure that you need to offload what we're preventing from move through tolling. If you did that in the first place, you wouldn't need tolling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Carlos Montes. I'm a general contractor. I'm not going to bore you with facts and figures. I drive all over the Portland metro area. I work about 12 hours a day. So let's expose the elephant in the room. We already know where these galleys and gantries are going. That's a fact. You're just not being upfront with it. So the next thing is, let's look at the Bridge of the Gods. If you've traveled that, you know there's a toll there. How long has that been there? Is there a toll still there? Absolutely. Has it long been paid for? Absolutely. So that is a good example of what tolling is going to do. All that is bringing tolls to the Portland metro area is a point of control, and revenue is the byproduct. So when you're going to spend 65% to administrate 35%, doesn't seem like that's a very equitable thing to do. So if we're hiding equity into this tolling, how's that going to be dispersed? Who decides equity? Nobody? I mean, this is something that is a pressure point on the driver, on the business owner, on the citizen. And it's all it's going to do is create diversion of traffic. And then what happens then? So the infrastructure for gas and DMV fees are already there. So nobody wants to pay more. Somebody wants to pay. let's use the gas tax if you need revenue and avoid the tolls, because it seems like a consensus here today. Most of the people that spoke say not in my backyard, but let's do it anyway, because it's going to affect me crossing the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the list of everyone who signed up to testify. I'd like to call on Representative Neron. And while Representative Neron is preparing to move down to the table, Representative Mannix joined us after everyone else introduced themselves. Representative Mannix, would you like to introduce yourself and say what district you represent?
Thank you. I'm Kevin Mannix. I represent Kaiser and North Salem, which is House District 21, and I'm a returnee to the legislature, having served, oops, mic was on or not? I served until January 2001, and here I am, January 2023, I've returned, thanks to the voters of Kaiser and North Salem. I do want to mention that I've heard comments tonight about folks not listening. I want you to be assured that some of us are very much listening, and I want you to be assured, too, that the debate is not how to implement tolling, but whether we should have any tolling, and whether or not there is a visionary alternative plan for the entire state as to how we're going to fund our road transportation system. I'll stop myself there, Madam Chair, but I do think it's important for folks to realize that there is not a presumption yet that any particular approach will be taken. It is unfortunate that in 2017, the legislature granted the Transportation Commission the authority to impose tolls, and I think that question will also be revisited. Thank you.
Representative Neron, we're happy to hear from you next.
Thank you, Co-Chair Nathanson, and I just want to acknowledge Co-Chair Frederick. I hope that he is feeling well and in good care. And thank you, members of the Special Subcommittee on Transportation Planning. Thanks for coming to House District 26, Senate District 13. We're glad to have you here, and we're thankful that you're here to hear our local concerns and gather feedback on proposed ODOT tolling plans. For the record, I am Courtney Neron, State Representative. I'm here to elevate the voices of the specific communities that I represent, Wilsonville, including the Charbonneau District, Parrot Mountain, Sherwood, King City, and parts of Tigard. We are at the urban growth edge, and many people are being priced out of the metro area and need to commute into this area for employment while living farther out. When Representative Walters, Representative Hartman, and I introduced House Bill 3614 to pause tolling and structure oversight in the 2023 legislative session, we were laser focused on our communities and on communities facing disproportionate impacts of regressive tolling plans, and on the need for improved ODOT planning, leadership, and transparency. In this district, we have deep concerns about inclusive communication with toll-impacted communities. We believe that community feedback must be incorporated into ODOT plans, that legislation insisting on safety on local roads, diversion mitigation, and environmental assessments must be followed, and that the economics of decision-making must be weighed. It would be entirely unacceptable to put a gantry in the Wilsonville city limits where I-5 is our only local option. As you heard, for the Charbonneau District specifically, as you heard our mayor share, if a tolling plan moves forward, Wilsonville proposes an ODOT amendment to the Oregon Highway Plan tolling section to accommodate our Charbonneau District by waiving tolls on trips on the interstate by residents, workers, and businesses of a community that is historically dependent upon the use of the interstate for local access. I believe it is incumbent upon us as legislators to provide specific direction to this, to the Oregon Transportation Commission, absent their own action on this equity suggestion. In this district, we understand the need for a comprehensive and detailed plan for replacing aging infrastructure and the need for responsive transportation solutions. We believe it must be done in a way that incorporates local feedback and that does not cut Charbonneau residents from their local grocery store, pharmacy, post office, livelihoods, and volunteer opportunities. The entire West Coast will benefit from the Boone Bridge's functioning and critically needed seismic upgrades. Please insist that ODOT work with communities electeds, and local experts. We need specifics in order to engage effectively. Please listen to our feedback. We want to see the local perspective reflected in the details of the concepts. In a recent RTAC meeting, ODOT heard repeated calls to show their work. Our communities want to know what is the gross revenue and net revenue every year of ODOT's analysis. We would like to see the raw data. In short, local jurisdictions should not have to file public records requests, as is currently happening, in order to get basic data. The cities I represent want to know what dollars raised here will be funding. We are concerned about exorbitant administrative costs, and we believe we should not be alone in funding regional and interstate infrastructure. We already have diversion at rush hour in our communities. Current toll proposals would create diversion in our town and county roads at all hours. Diversion that dumps tens of thousands of extra cars onto neighborhood roads only transfers where safety issues, congestion, and pollution are concentrated. In closing, my constituents are engaged, informed, and passionate about this issue, and we are insisting that ODOT share details and reliable information. Our communities are raising valid, low-income, fixed-income, logistical, safety, and environmental concerns, and offering thoughtful and measured alternatives. Our communities should have the right to safely and affordably move through our own streets. ODOT and the OTC, and your committee, thank you, must understand the larger context and value local input. Thank you again for listening to my community, our community members today, and thank you for coming to Clackamas County to hear our voices.
First, I'd like to say thank you to my colleagues, everybody who made it to this hearing this evening. So thank you to all the colleagues here. Next, thank you to the City of Wilsonville for having us in your facility. This is a wonderful place to be. We appreciate all the help that you gave to us in scheduling and convening a meeting of this legislative group. And thank you to the staff, to the legislative staff who help pull this off. It's not a small task to make sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's for public comment, for appropriately recording the meetings, for getting all the signups done. Well done. Thank you, staff. But finally, I want to thank you, everyone in the audience. You've listened respectfully tonight. Thank you for all of your thoughtful comments and for participating in a public meeting like this where we share a lot of ideas. With that, I'm closing the, and a reminder, and that's what staff is good for. It's a final reminder. If you were unable to complete your comments, you have a different thought you'd like to send, remember you can still submit your comments by email or regular mail. The address is available online, but you have to send them by the end of the day, Monday. There's a time limit for submitting comments for a public record attached to a public meeting. So it would have to be by Monday afternoon. So with that, I'm closing this informational meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you.